Are you from Los Angeles?
Originally from South Pasadena, and then we moved to Utah where I did my middle school and high school years, but then I came back for college. So yes and no.
So did you always want to be a journalist? Walk me through your upbringing.
So this really was the first and only thing I've ever wanted to do. So I would wake up in the morning as a kid and I would watch the local news stations before school. I just thought it was like I was fascinated by the morning shows. I loved them. And I knew the timing, like I knew when the breaks would come and when certain reporters would come on. And I knew that's what I wanted to do. So when we moved to Utah and I was 10 years old, I pitched myself to this local TV station there, which is it was this tiny little station called Park City Television. It's still around. And they said, sure, we'll do a little kids segment on our morning news show. So I got to start working when I think it was 11 when that little segment started. So did it every week, and we would highlight local kids doing interesting things in the community. It was like such a fun experience. And that took me through high school and just solidified that this was what I wanted to do. So felt very fortunate in that sense.
Did you go to school out there too?
Went to high school out there, but then I went to Chapman University for college. They have a fantastic broadcast journalism program and film department that was just amazing. I was there before the new building was built. It's like this gorgeous new film school. So we were in trailers when we were there, but now it was a great program. Anyway. And
talking through your career, you actually started as a producer, right? Yeah. And I want to talk about that because a lot of journalists are producers right now. They're thinking about making that jump to on air. What was that like for you?
For sure. Well, so there's so many opportunities behind the scenes to really like get your feet wet when it comes to reporting. So I was fortunate enough to get a job out of school at Fox News at the network and kind of wore a lot of hats there. Was in the entertainment unit and was on the assignment desk, helped produce, and was in their research department as well. So got to do a lot of different things. But someone gave me great advice that my very first day, Eric Barnes, who's a photojournalist there for many, many years. And he just said, you can make of this what you want. You know, a lot of people you just get stuck in the daily grind and you get comfortable and that's great. And you can live out your career here and that's fine. Or you can really make this something different. And if you volunteer on your own time, ask if you can go out with reporters, shadow people that have the jobs that you want, and really put yourself out there. And don't just treat this like a 9-to-5. Treat this as a lifestyle. You work after hours, go out on night shoots with people, ask them how to do stand-ups, use the opportunities that you have and the mentors that you have in front of you to really hone those skills. And then someday, if you want to do something more with it, you can. And I really took that to heart and did all of it. So, constantly just volunteering to help with shoots outside of my normal work schedule and asking reporters for help with stand-ups. So by the time I was ready to really make that move to go on air, I had a killer reel because I was out there doing, these big stories at the time. I was, at the wildfires and at, the big events of the time and doing these really well-produced stand-ups because they were network photographers who were helping. A lot of people they're still there and they're very happy and they're doing they've progressed throughout the company, but didn't want to go on air. And that's something that I really, really wanted and chased diligently from day one.
So from there, what happened next?
So once I felt ready, like that I was at a turning point, either I'm going to stay here and carve out this producing career, or I just got to bite the bullet and make that jump to local, to news, to be on air. I sent out tapes. Back then it was actual physical, like hard copies, and sent it to, I think, 50 stations throughout the country. Most of them didn't have job openings. I just looked up all the news directors that I could find and sent out these tapes. And I got one phone call, just one, from a station in Fayetteville, Arkansas, which at the time I couldn't have put on a map. I could not have told you where that was. I had no idea. And just on the spot, I felt so comfortable with this news director. He was so interested in the experience that I had and what that would bring to their market. And yeah, from there, they brought me out. I don't know if they do that anymore, but they brought me out for like a day to kind of meet everybody and see if it was the right fit. And it was. And they, I think the offer that they gave me was less than half of what I was making at the time here in Los Angeles, which was absolutely terrifying. But it turned out that the cost of living was so much better. I was actually better off at the end of the day, making so much less because rent went from, LA prices to Arkansas prices, which was a huge difference.
Yeah.
So,
well, and you make two good points on this. One, not being afraid because there's not a job opening to apply. I think that is such a big thing because you never know when that news director is hiring, and you never know if it's even going to go on the site. They might be just looking, and you might be at the right moment, at the right time.
100%. And that is unique to this industry, I think, so many factors go into the hiring of on-air reporters that have nothing to do with the candidates. And it's a matter of timing. And if you truly are persistent enough and you make as many connections as you can with as many news directors as you can and hiring managers that you can, at some point they are looking for you. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when, and when that will happen. And the more connections that you make, the more likely it is that one of those days you will get a phone call and say, "Hey, we just had this, this reporter leave. I met you a few years ago, and I know you keep sending me your reel, and I'd love to talk to you about this before we put it out there to the general public." Right.
Even if they say we're not looking right now, you never know a year down the road when they say, "Hey, who is that female that was looking a year ago for a position? Maybe she's still interested."
Yep, exactly. And that's how it works. That's how a lot of colleagues that I work with today have ended up where we've ended up, is because you continue those relationships. So even if it's a no right away, keep those contacts and make long-term connections with these people. I did that for the first 15 years, I think, of my career. I just followed up with all of the news directors and producers and anyone who I had met along the way on a twice yearly basis, just to send out my hey, I did this really cool story, or I just wanted to send you an updated reel, check in, how are you doing? And those little things along the way can pay off in such big ways later down the road. It's so important to invest in those relationships as early on as you can.
You made another good point. You talked about going to Arkansas, and I think a lot of people get scared to go to that little market that they don't know about.
I was.
But, that market, that contract goes so fast.
It does.
And then you're on to the next thing. And
yep.
I think that journalists, and aspiring journalists in particular, need to realize, that contract, that market that maybe you don't want to go to, one, you're going to get a lot more experience and cut your teeth learning that stuff. But then also that market contract's going to go like that, quick.
Like that. And at the same time, you can make mistakes that you cannot make in a bigger market. If you make some of those rookie mistakes that all of us make in a big market, in a big setting, the visibility is so large, that could be it. I mean, you could end your career. You want to start in these smaller places so that you learn all these little things that are just natural to the process that you have to learn somewhere, and it is better to learn them in a smaller place. And another thing I will say, someone gave me the great advice to just reframe those first contracts in a different way and to think, this is grad school. I'm getting paid to go to grad school.
Right.
It's not a degree, but I'm getting a little bit of money, and I am learning just the nitty-gritty of this industry. And after a year or two, like you said, then you are moving on to bigger and better, and it just progresses from there. But if you just can reframe it and think of it as a learning experience, not, this is a job. All my friends are out in the big city making a ton of money doing other things. I'm, this dinky little contract. But reframe it and think about it like grad school that you get to get paid for, and you get to go out and work every day,
Right. Stay in your lane.
Yeah. 100%. It pays off.
Have you ever watched some of your first market reel tape?
Oh God. I never want to see those. I never want to see those. I can't even imagine.
How could I be that bad? But yet.
Well, I'm sure you have the same experiences.
Yeah.
I mean, you did all of this too.
Yeah, it's wild.
It's wild. And yeah, grateful that it took the amount of time that it did to get to Los Angeles because, oh my goodness.
So from Arkansas, what was next?
So Arkansas, I really wanted to get to New York or the tri-state area. That was my focus. And so I put all of my efforts into getting to know every single person that I could in the industry in New York. And I probably spent 8 months just truly bombarding these news directors and these hiring managers.
You have to.
And wasn't getting anywhere. I mean, 8 months of rejection, just rejection after rejection after rejection, saying, you only have a year on air. This is the number one market. We're not, go a few other places first and then we'll consider you, kind of thing. But I was so determined. And I finally just got really bold with the way that I was approaching some of these people. So I started writing these emails. I cringe now. But to News 12, which is a cable network in the tri-state area, I started writing emails that would just say, like, hire me. Things that I knew that they would open. And after, it was almost a year, I think, of truly just targeting and getting absolutely nowhere, I got a phone call from HR. And they just said, we would love to, a couple things. We'd love to bring you in for an interview. Our management is also requesting that you please stop emailing them. They know who you are. They're aware of you. There is now an opening. Please stop and come in for an interview. And that was the job that I got. So it took a year of, weekly emails and tapes and updates and, new introductions, and just, I never gave up on it.
And how long were you at 12 News?
Was at 12 for almost 5 years, I want to say, and I did all their stations. So I worked in Long Island, I worked in New Jersey, I worked very briefly in Connecticut, and then ended up as an anchor in their Westchester bureau. So it was all over the tri-state area for those few years. And then for the last 3 years, I think I was on the morning show as an anchor, which was a different experience.
So then you ventured out to Los Angeles.
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
So that was scary, in that I did not have a job lined up. So I left a contract, I let that expire, and then that's when we decided to make this jump. So did not have a job lined up, but hoped that those relationships that I had been building over the course of, at that point, 10 years would pay off. And they did eventually. It took 3 months, I think, before I started at CBS Newspath. And then from there was hired to ABC, to the local Channel 7 here, which was phenomenal, and was a general assignment reporter, freelance there, but permalance. So like a full-time freelance reporter for 5 years, I think.
So let's talk about that, because you worked both national for CBS Newspath and local. Walk me through some of the differences you experienced working for a national team and then working for a local team.
That's a really good question, and they are stark differences. I mean, the national team, so we covered everything west of the Rockies at CBS Newspath, and there were only a few reporters. So at the drop of a hat, at any time of day, on any given day, you could get that phone call, hey, we need you in Northern California. Like, you have a flight in 1 hour, go. Or you do a couple of weeks on something in Northern California and they say, oh, something's happening in Arizona. We need you to just head straight from there. And you could be gone for weeks and weeks, if not months at a time sometimes, if there was a lot of breaking news happening. And that was what was so, I have 3 stepkids, and it was really hard to be kind of constantly just being pulled in different directions and moving. I loved it, but it's a different beast. Local is very different. I mean, local, as you know, you're within your coverage area. So you're generally within the region, and you're generally on a specific shift. You work the night shows or the morning shows or the dayside shows, but that's kind of it for the most part. So it's a much more predictable schedule than on the national side. So I loved the national side of it, but it was hard with a family. It was a really hard schedule to keep up with a family, and local really was the right balance for my personal life.
Let's touch on that, because you have your daughter Harper. You also have how many stepchildren?
3.
So
3 stepkids.
How do you do it, Superwoman? Tell me.
Oh my gosh. It's chaos. We don't know what we're doing at any given point. I mean, the older kids are older now. So they were, I think when we moved out here, they were 12, 6, and 5 or 4. So they really needed a lot of attention.
Right.
And now one is out of the house and the other 2 are teenagers. So they're much more self-sufficient. And we have Harper, who's 2.5. So that's a whole different ball game.
Right.
So, I mean, every stage is just so different. There's different needs and there's just different requirements for each and every step of the way. All of them are fun, but all of them, as you know, as a working mom, require a lot of time. It's a huge time commitment at all hours of the day, and it's hard to balance when you're traveling like that. It's hard to balance anyway. It's every working mother, I think, is superwoman. I mean, it's a hard gig.
When you were pregnant, were you also reporting at the time?
Yeah, right up until the end.
Yeah, let's talk about that, because I know a lot of journalists, are going through the same thing. You're out in the field.
Yeah.
It can be really taxing. What are some tips, and what did you do during that time?
It was hard. I mean, it's hard. Again, just driving long distances when you're that pregnant, and jumping out of the truck and you're just running to something often. It's physically taxing, as well as just the emotional, everything that comes with some of the subject matters that we do. My best tip is to invest in a pee funnel. You can't find bathrooms. I was pregnant during COVID as well. A pee funnel. It's saved my life in so many situations where you're in the middle of nowhere, you're in a neighborhood and you can't move your cars or your live trucks, and you're in continuing coverage. It's the only, I don't know, it saved me. That is my one, I tell that to every pregnant reporter I meet, like, get a pee funnel on Amazon.
That's what
It'll
I'm
save
going to
you.
cut as my tease for this podcast.
Get a pee funnel.
Chelsea says get a pee funnel.
It is a game changer. Guys have it so easy. They have it so easy. We don't have that, but
we don't.
That changes it.
Let's talk about marriage.
Okay.
You are married to a Fox News correspondent. Mm-hmm. What is it like being married to not only somebody in your industry, but pretty much the same job?
The same, but different in that he is national and international. So he does the travel now. He's the one that goes and will be gone for long periods at a time. It is such a blessing, I think, because we both understand the demands of the job. And it's hard, as you know. I mean, there are really long days. There are things change very quickly. You have to be able to adapt your schedule very quickly, and that can be really hard for people with traditional 9-to-5 jobs who are married to journalists, because it puts a lot of pressure on the other person. But because we both do the same thing, essentially, I think we're really able to give and take, jump in when the other person is gone, and kind of refill each other's cups if one of us is dealing with a particularly tough subject matter or extended coverage of something that's really difficult. I think we've found a way to kind of balance each other out and help. And I think that is so important, that we have the same job, because we're able to understand those kinds of demands.
That's what I was going to say. You have the same job, so you kind of just understand what the other person's going through.
Yeah, which is rare. I mean, I know a lot of people in the LA market, reporters with different stations, are married, and I think that's a huge part of it. There's a lot of couples within in the LA market, because it just takes a lot out of you, and it's really nice to be able to understand the complexities of it with somebody else.
Do you ever say, I need this forensic psychologist, I don't know where to turn, hey, I'll just call my husband and see if he has a lead?
We do. So we're with the same company, so we absolutely do that. Like there are times he'll call me and he'll say, you did something the other week you had an expert on, something. I need somebody for the story that we're doing. What was that person's name? So we share the sources like that. And it's great because they become, these sources kind of become part of our extended family, where they will come on, our local shows all the time, and then they'll go on the national shows with my husband. So we enjoy fostering those relationships and sharing those great connections that we make.
Can you walk me through a typical news day at Fox 11 for you?
Yeah, of course. So I'm about to start one right now. So we start off with an editorial meeting, but you need to come in prepared for that meeting. So my day starts much earlier in terms of talking to sources, seeing what's going on. I'm listening, watching the news all morning, kind of as I'm getting ready for the day. And then you have to come to that meeting with turnable pitches for that day. So usually anywhere from 2 to 5 if you can. So we have an editorial meeting via Zoom, and it's very fast. We all pitch our stories. The executive producers talk it over with all of us, and we decide what our coverage plan is for the day, knowing that it could change 10 times throughout the day. But you start on your first story. So since COVID, we used to meet at the station and then drive with our colleagues.
I am very familiar.
Yes, but we don't do that right now.
What a time saver.
I love it personally. I mean, so I'm in my own car. I meet my crew wherever we're going, and then we just kind of meet each other throughout the day as our stories change and we're doing different things. So there's upsides and downsides to it, obviously. I mean, back when we were in the same news van, I could be working instead of just driving. You know, I could be researching and writing and things of that nature. But no, it's great. So then we go out for the first day, and if we're in the early shows, you're usually getting somewhere minutes before the live shot. You're jumping out, getting as much information as you can, and then just jumping in front of the camera and going live, and then, you know, getting interviews between that show and the 6 o'clock show, doing the same for 6, and then expanding on it for 10 and 11 if your story doesn't change. It changes often, though. Something will break someplace, and if you're the closest crew, you'll be the one to move.
What's so nice now, since the pandemic, is that PIOs and experts are willing to jump on a Zoom when they wouldn't do that before. I would have to get 2 interviews minimum, driving all across town to get this little soundbite to add to a package.
And coordinate the timing of people. I mean, it's at the point now where I can say, do you have 5 minutes right now? And I can pull over the car, set up my hotspot, and do an interview where that used to take hours. I mean, that was something that, you know, you have to call ahead and book a time, and can your crew and you get there within this time frame while your other interview is across town at a different time? You know, can you squeeze it all in? Now it's a game changer. It's a game changer, truly.
I know a lot of journalists are wanting to bring more pitch ideas to their meeting. Do you have any advice for that? Because you mentioned in your meeting that you bring 2 to 5 pitches each time. And that can be a struggle for especially aspiring journalists, knowing what ideas to pitch, what to come up with.
It can be overwhelming. And I'll tell you, it still stresses me out. That is still a stressful part of the day, is making sure that you have things that are legitimately turnable for that day. The best advice is to really open your ears when you're out and about. Some of the best stories, the best local stories that I get are listening to people in line at Target, or, you know, really just having open ears as to what people are talking about, what's important to people in the community, paying attention to things in your community as well, like neighborhood meetings, and Nextdoor is a great resource. Get a lot of pitches from Nextdoor. But just listening to, not just reading the headlines, but just listening to what people care about in your community, talking to your neighbors, talking to business owners. You know, when you're getting a cup of coffee, if the owner is there, talk about what they've been up against. There are stories everywhere. There are so many stories out there. You just have to have your ears open to them, I think.
I agree. So you've covered a lot of national stories. You've covered everything from Michael Jackson's death, right? Mm-hmm. You've covered the wildfires, pretty much every wildfire in Southern California, I would bet.
There are a lot of wildfires in Southern California, yes.
The UCLA protests last year. What would you say is a big story moment that sticks out to you?
That's a good question. In terms of big stories, where you've got the national media, everybody is descending on whatever event. It tends to involve celebrities here in Los Angeles. That's just kind of the nature of it. So I think the most recent big one was Sean Diddy Combs and his mansion in Holmby Hills that was raided. And that was actually a Fox 11 exclusive at the time. We had that information before anybody else. So we were there, 24 hours a day for that entire week, I think it was. But I think the stories that are most impactful, at least for me, and I know a lot of my colleagues as well, are much smaller. They're the stories that really impact local families who are either going through the worst time in their life or highlighting people or organizations that are doing really great things or great work that aren't getting a lot of attention. And those you can see tangible results, whether the person gets caught because we've followed up on a story for weeks and weeks and kept it, out there, kept surveillance video out there, and the person gets caught, or a GoFundMe just blows up because of a story that we did on a certain organization or a family that's really struggling. Like, those are the things that really, those mean a lot to me, more so than these big stories that are getting covered by every single outlet in the world,
Yeah, that's why we do what we do, is because this one little story might not mean something to me or you, but to them. It's everything.
It's everything. And you are the one lifeline oftentimes in their time, in their darkest hour. I mean, truly in their darkest hour. And there's something really, I just feel honored to be a part of that for so many people, to be able to tell their story and get information out there that really makes a difference to people. Like, that's when I go home at the end of nights where we're covering stories like that and think, okay, I feel good about today.
Absolutely.
Like, this was good.
What would you say is the hardest part of your job? What do you find most challenging?
Ooh, driving. So, I mean, LA is such a huge market, right? The coverage area goes basically to the San Diego border, to Santa Barbara, to Palm Springs, to the ocean. So it's a huge area. And, something can break in Orange County and then break in the Antelope Valley later that night. And so you're driving so much. That's truly, logistically, the hardest part, is just getting everywhere that news is happening in LA. For me, I think the hard, especially since having my daughter, is stories involving kids.
Yes.
I try to separate as much as I can and try not to get too emotionally invested, but it's so hard.
So hard.
Those absolutely destroy me.
And having a child, you just have so much more perspective as
Yes.
a journalist. Have you noticed that?
1,000%. And people told me that, and I didn't really understand until I became a mom.
Right.
People said it will change. There's a different kind of empathy that comes forward. You relate to people on a different level. And I didn't believe it for the longest time. And I absolutely feel that now. It's just, families that are grieving, or my heart just breaks in ways that I was kind of able to isolate myself from a little bit in the past.
Yeah. A lot of journalists, switching gears, have been burnt out. There's been a lot of layoffs. How do you stay motivated?
That's a really good question. And I think that's something a lot of journalists are struggling with right now, because it is a tough industry to be in. I mean, we're moving into kind of digital formats now. Traditional news is it's changing. People don't necessarily consume it the way that they traditionally have. It's just the way that we deliver it is changing, and we don't really know where that's going to go. So we're all trying to, stay on top of it and keep up with the trends. I think really just those stories that you get to do every so often. It's not every night, may not be every week, but those stories that do make a difference are what keep me in the game. That's when I'm, driving home after a live shot and just reminding myself how lucky I am to be doing this job and to be doing those stories that can make a difference. And that is what gives me the drive to keep going. Also, just the joy of the job. It's such a fun job, right?
Oh,
I mean,
absolutely.
Like, you never know where you're going to end up. You never know who you're going to be talking to, or what, scenario you're going to be in, or what neighborhood you're going to end up in. There's just, I love what we do. I love the job itself. And I think that needs to be a requirement for anybody getting into this. It can't just be about being on TV or,
you need the passion.
You need the passion, because it will beat it out of you. It's tough. It's a hard job, but it is the best job in the world, in my opinion.
For those who want to walk in your shoes, what do you think journalists need to succeed in a large market in Los Angeles?
I think, again, we talked about this a little bit earlier, but that passion is a huge part of it, because without it, I think it can just be overwhelming and you burn out pretty quickly with the hours that you're doing and the stories that we're covering. Oftentimes it can be a lot. I think another thing is just the ability to understand that rejection is not personal. It 9 times out of 10 has absolutely nothing to do with you or your candidacy. It is external factors that news director is dealing with in terms of filling out their staff. It really doesn't have anything to do with you. And
wildly subjective.
Yeah, completely. And it's hard not to take that to heart. It's really hard to not get discouraged. But that persistence is what I think ultimately makes or breaks getting into a big market or a network level, is just that ability to say, okay, I'm not going to take that personally. That they weren't looking for me right now, and I can move on. That was a business decision, and great. I'm going to pick myself up and keep going. But without that, I think, I have seen younger journalists get very discouraged and leave before they even started. Interns that we've had previously that just say, I wasn't getting any bites, and I don't want to, it's too overwhelming. And they go on and go into a different industry altogether. And so I think if you really want to do this, there are so many opportunities, but you have to be so persistent and not take rejection personally.
Yeah, stay at it, and also be open to the opportunities that do come your way.
Absolutely, and that's the exciting thing about this era of news that we're in. We don't know where this is going to go. So things like, podcasts and new media, emerging media, this is exciting. We don't know what's going to take off and what's not going to take off. So there are so many opportunities outside of the traditional broadcast news format that are out there now. And they're all worth trying, I think, if you have the opportunity to. I mean, why not? There's so many different ways to be a journalist in this day and age that, you and I didn't have when we were first starting out. It really was just traditional broadcast news.
Right.
And now it's just an open book.
Yeah, times are changing, and it's staying on top of the times as much as you can.
Absolutely. Yeah, which is exhausting.
Yeah, exactly. Before I let you go, I have a couple quick fires for you. So,
all right, ready.
Little fun game. Your coffee order.
Ooh. If I'm being fancy or just like...
Tell me both.
Okay, so if I'm feeling fancy, I'll do a skinny vanilla latte, extra hot, with no foam.
Love that.
Which is way too much. And otherwise just a black coffee with some steamed milk.
Okay, love it. Your favorite travel destination?
I think there are so many places that I haven't gone yet. I'm sure it's still out there. But northern Italy, Lake Como, Italy is, I think, the most gorgeous place on earth. Oh my gosh.
And stay with George Clooney somewhere,
yes,
right?
George
That would just be like the icing on the cake.
Who else? Richard Branson. Like, I'd be fine as a guest if you guys are
if you're
listening.
If you're watching this, which I'm certain you are.
We'd love to come and stay. Love to come and
I've never been to Italy. That is on the top of my bucket list.
Oh, it's beautiful. Just love it.
Your favorite restaurant?
Little Door in Beverly Grove.
Oh.
Been there forever. It is just, they just nail it every time. It's so delicious. And
That
just
place is great.
Have you been there?
I have. Something people often get wrong about you.
I think in a work sense, people tend to think that I'm not going to be as tough as I end up being. I think I get underestimated sometimes out in the field.
Do you think that's because you're a female?
Yeah, I think that plays into it, I'm sure. And I try to be very approachable and very, nice and accommodating when we first meet people. But there are times that I need to go down a certain line of questioning, and they think that I'll stick to their talking points and move on, and I absolutely will not. I think that shocks people sometimes, that I'll continue to push them on something if I think that there's something there that they need to answer.
The last movie, TV show, or book you watched and loved?
Oh, the one I cannot get out of my mind is a book, Intermezzo by Sally Rooney.
Oh.
Love this author, and it was a book club. I just joined a book club for the first time ever. It's been so fun.
I want to do that. That
It's
sounds so fun.
I've always wanted an excuse where I have to read, and that's just been my absolute favorite. It's
What's this book about?
About chess and relationships, which are not two things that I would ever, I don't know, it's not really my genre.
Did you watch
typically,
Queen's
but
Gambit?
I did not. That's on my list though. But yeah, now
amazing.
that I've read this book,
You
I
have
wanna
to.
do that. But
Okay,
I
I'm
can't
gonna
get it
read
out of my
that.
mind. You know, it's like one of those that just stays with you. I love that.
I'm going to get it. A snapshot of an ordinary, everyday moment that gives you true joy.
Oh, just being with my daughter, like swinging. My daughter and I tend to go to a park near the school before we go to school, before I drop her off every day at daycare, and just swinging with her on the swings. That is just every day is a moment that I can't get enough of. I just like try to pause and just think, this is everything.
This is it.
This is like,
This is all
this
you
is
need.
my happy place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The
I
belly
love
laughs.
that. Oh, the belly laughs. Oh, love
If
it.
you could switch lives with one person for a day, who would it be?
I love that. Not a person, but can I say my dog?
Yes.
My dog. She has it so good. I mean, truly. She naps like 23 hours a day. She wakes up for treats and walks and love. And I mean, right?
Yeah.
That sounds amazing.
When's the last time you had a nap?
Yeah, a nap or just, food delivered to you every day. You're
Yeah.
fed, you're taken care of, and you get nothing but love. I love it.
What's your dog's name?
Callie.
Callie.
Callie Peluche.
Oh. One thing you're deeply grateful for right now.
But my husband, I mean, I would say that time and time again, any day of the week, he is just my rock and our family's rock. I couldn't do anything without him. He is just, yeah, he's our North Star.
I love that. If you could go back in time to when you first started your career, what piece of advice would you give yourself?
I think really don't take things personally in business. It can be a rough industry. People can be harsh. News directors are very busy people, and they don't always have the time to make you feel good about yourself after a conversation. I mean, it can be really rough.
Right.
And the less you can take things personally, the quicker you can stand up, dust yourself off, and move on. And I think I did. I spent a lot of time agonizing over rejection and feeling sad about things that just were not personal. They had nothing to do with me. And had I been able to just move on quicker, I think I would have saved myself a lot of agony at the beginning. And I think young journalists could benefit from that too. It's not personal. Like, it's just business.
Chelsea, this was amazing.
This was so
such
fun.
Great advice. Thanks so much for coming on. Where can everyone find you, watch you, talk about you?
So Fox 11, I'm on every night at 10 and 11 o'clock, sometimes 5 and 6 as well, on Channel 11, and then the Fox LA app. And then on Instagram, which I am so bad about updating, I have to admit. But on Instagram, Chelsea E. Hunt, which is my legal name, and on Facebook as well, Chelsea Edwards, Fox 11.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. This is so fun.
Now let's go get lunch or a drink or
Please.
something
All
very
of the
soon.
above. All of the above. I would love that.